Um, I will just tell you what I do with the caveat that I just do what works for me. And I think that everybody can take some general ideas and works for them. But I certainly don't think that what works for me would work for everyone. So it's more to just get some general ideas and to think about maybe what systems somebody already has in their classroom that do work for them and how they could nudge it towards having some components of economics, whether you're talking about changing something that's points into dollars or you'll see them when I get to my classroom jobs, adding a salary instead of just having a job. So what I'm going to show you, I started at least 10 years ago, and each year has changed. Some of what it has changed has been because of the kids that I had. Some of what's changed is because kids had ideas and they said, hey, how about we try this? And we tried it and it worked. And there's some things that I've dropped just because they overcomplicated things and didn't work. So I hope you take it from that approach, not as that I know what I'm doing. I'm just telling you what I'm doing, and probably next year I'll do it differently. So I hope that if you have any ideas or you're doing something similar or you've seen something and you can add to it, please feel free to add to it, because I certainly don't think that this is the only way to do it. I did just put, I put down the economic standards from kindergarten through fourth grade. I think just to make the main point that these first two kindergarten standards about, scarcity, supply, demand, and the most important thing about making decisions are really the standards you see in every single grade. So here they are in kindergarten. In first grade, we have about scarcity, again, supply, demand, and then about making personal, I don't know if you can see mine here because on mine it's covered, about making various personal decisions. Again, in second grade, scarcity, making personal decisions. In third, they add some more, but it's still personal decisions and choices. And then now a little bit talking about resources. And in fourth grade, we're still talking about making decisions and how those decisions influence people. And we get a little bit more into things like human resources and natural resources. But I think that what I hope that kids mostly get from economics is a feeling of economics, but I think mostly a feeling that the main part of economics is that your decisions affect your outcomes. And that's whether you decide how much money you're going to make or how much money you're going to spend or how much money you're going to lose due to making silly choices, but that that they have agency over various parts of their outcomes is an important part, I think. So the first thing I did want to say is the classroom economy is like most certainly not my concept. I mean, if you Google it, there's a million different classroom economies online. They're all somewhat different. Some are actually professionally made. You can buy them. There's some put out by different nonprofit organizations. So I just want to make clear that this isn't mine. However, every part of mine I've made, like by looking for different ideas and trying to think about what would work. And I think that's my third part is starting so simple of like what could possibly work for you. And if that works, then maybe partway through the year, you add something else in, or the next year, add something else in, and starting simple. So I took some pictures. So in my class, every student has a job. I'm going to show you the job chart in a minute. And I do have job descriptions available. In the beginning, I had kids apply for jobs, and I stopped that just because it became too cumbersome. I mean, I like the idea of it, but it just took too much time. And so one thing that I think I like is the salaries depend on the job. So some jobs have a much higher salary than others. And in fact, I have two jobs that you're required to moonlight because you actually don't make enough in either one of those jobs. So you have to have a second job. And we talk about like what would make a job a higher paying job versus a lower paying job. And the jobs that you have to do consistently every single day are higher paying. And also the jobs that take much more sort of academic skills. For example, the accountant is the most expensive job, and I'll show you what the accountant does, but they earn the most money. And a door holder actually earns the least money. And that in some cases, like the door holder, we actually we have 2 door holders and they each earn a different amount despite having the exact same job. And, we talk about that this happens. And so when they say that's not fair, I was like, yeah, that's true. But these are the kinds of things that happen in the real world. So I did have several jobs require moonlighting. Yeah, some jobs are salary, so you get paid for the whole week, and others are per diem. So, for example, the homework monitor gets paid each day they work. So if they don't work a day, they don't get paid, whereas other jobs are on salary. And so I just use that to explain that that is actually how real jobs work. And so some people, if they don't go to work, they don't get paid. And other people, if they don't go to work, they do get paid. And so it depends on your job. And finally, people do get fired if they don't do their job. Like each Monday, they get a new job. But if they're not doing their job and somebody's kindly reminded them and they continue to not do it, they lose their job, so they don't get paid that week. And then somebody else can take their job as a second job and they'll get paid extra. So I'll just show you. This is you can see I recycle it every year because it was kind of a pain to make. So this gives you some example of our job chart, and then you can ask questions. But so you can see with the little stickers that I have changed some of the jobs, like some jobs get changed. Each job, the little sticker on the outside, which is their salary, is what we agree on in the beginning of the year, how much somebody will get paid for that job. And then the wheel rotates. So if you see that little red dot, which is at 227 now, the Monday of the week, wherever that red dot is, everyone has that job. So when the whole chart is filled up after 18 weeks, everybody has had one job each time. So the passing out of jobs is a little more equitable than in real life, but they do all have a chance to try every job. I'll just stop there to see if anyone has any questions about jobs and salaries. No? Okay. Okay, and then the next thing is I use fines as a system, like basically mostly for behavior, but for other things as well. So I have a fine sheet on the next page, but in the first couple of weeks of school, one of the things we do as a team building is we work in groups to determine what kind of things kids should get fined for and what a reasonable fine is for that infraction. And it's sort of like an evolutionary thing. Like sometimes if we have a real problem with something one year, some kids will say, I really think we need to raise the fine on that because people keep doing it. Like $1 doesn't seem enough and we'll raise the fine, or we add new fines as issues arise because you never know. Every year there's different issues. So I have the fines posted, but you'll see from the next picture, it is very evolving. And when new fines get imposed, people are grandfathered in, and we use that term. And so they will say, I'll say, I think we need a fine for that. And their first question, am I going to be grandfathered in? Do I have to pay the fine for this kind of thing? And so the fines are really fairly low because they really are a goal and not a punishment. And there's no fine and nothing in my head. And I talk with the kids about this, that it should feel that it's a punishment. It's really a reminder, and I use the idea of the overdue book, the overdue book being, 25 cents a day or something. They're not trying to punish you. They're just trying to give you a little bit of incentive to remember that book. And so this is our fines chart from this year. And so if you look at the top, the typed ones, those are the ones we had agreed on in the beginning of the year that kids had come up with. Some of them, they would actually fine much higher than I would fine. In some cases, they were things that really, like unkind was one that they felt very strongly it needed to be a very big fine because they really wanted people to not want to do it. And you can see here, I'm just looking at the bottom, the kids add them in. Oops, sorry. Whoever's the accountant adds them in when they get added. Kicking chairs for $3 was the latest fine. And it was because some kids during our morning meeting were kind of kicking the chairs and making these noises during morning meeting. And the kids all felt that it was very annoying. And so they thought that the solution would be to have a fine for it.
Jodie, can you just pause there because it's on my screen. I don't know if it is for the rest of us. It's really small. So I just wanted to take a moment and
sure.
Read it.
Oh, on my screen it's huge, so sorry, I didn't realize it was small on your screen.
Well, it's just that there's a lot of text on the page, I think.
Oh, okay.
Do you find that initially um, it, kids are more likely to accuse others or try to fine others? Like, does
Okay,
it
so
become
that's the thing.
powdery?
Thanks for asking that. They can't fine. I'm the only person that can fine. So they can say something like, please stop kicking the chair. But again, like I say, it kind of like compared to like maybe like a police officer is that you can see other people speeding and avoid them, but you can't pull them over, So I'm the only person that can impose fines. So they can't fine each other. And they're pretty clear about that because like any teacher, there's also plenty of things that these things happen and I'll let it go one time or something, depending on the situation. Like for example, like wasted moment is one of our most common fines. And a wasted moment is like when you knew that what you were doing was going to hold the whole class up. Like we're all lined up to go to art and there's a kid sitting there still like trying to eat his last 3 pieces of snack. So something like that where you're sort of like wasting other people's time. So everyone kind of knows what a wasted moment is. And it's just sort of that incentive of like when the whole class is lined up, you need to just tell yourself, I'm not going to keep eating my snack. So things like that. Yes, some of them, I get gasping, groaning, and whining is another one that in the beginning of the year is actually a really big problem. And the fines almost completely eliminates gasping, groaning, and whining. But again, I'm the one that calls the fine. I just say something like, I don't really stop and make a big deal of it because they're all small fines. I just say, John whining $1 or John whining $2 or something like that, depending on the situation.
I love the dabbing and flossing.
Yeah, that was from a few years ago. We haven't had as much dabbing and flossing, but like if you get to the bottom, like, because I always type the new ones in an order, like the top ones are ones I've probably had for the last 10 years. And then as you go down, like are the newer and newer ones. But yeah, most of them, the kids are the ones that decide though. Echoing is when I say something and then a person repeats it. And that's another one that is fairly common. I'll say, take out your books. And somebody will say, take out your books. But the fining actually is sort of like a nice small reminder. I mean, they're making $20 in a week a lot of times. So the $2, if you're not constantly doing stuff, it almost doesn't matter in the big picture. But if you're constantly doing stuff, it does. I do think an important part of this is that they have come up with them. They have decided the fines. They have agreed to it. And they feel a sense of ownership of adding new fines or changing the fines. And it really helps with buy-in. You want me to wait or keep going?
I was able to see it. I don't know about everybody else.
So this is the
Definitely don't wait for me.
Okay, this is the accounting sheet. I cut off their names so you couldn't see. So each week, one kid is in charge of being the accountant. And the accountant gets a blank accounting sheet in the beginning of the week. And they have to write down every person's job and their salary on Monday. And then they keep this clipboard at their desk. And every time I find somebody, they have to mark it down under the debts right here. So that way, like I'm not carrying around a clipboard. I'm not going to my desk. Right. So like I'll be teaching math and I'll just say like, John, $1 interrupting, but the accountant just marks -1. If you can see where they've marked it in the gray. And then at the end of the week on Friday, they add up how much the person will get paid based on taking their salary and subtracting their fines. So this looks like it was actually a pretty good week. Not that many people got fined. And then one person didn't do their job. And I think that how you do it has a lot to do with like everyone's own personal style. For me, the thought of me keeping track of the fines and stopping and doing it would be very overwhelming. But the kids love having ownership over it. They love being the accountant. And, we talk about a lot at the beginning of the year. It's never been a problem of kids harassing the accountant. I mean, I'm very clear with them. Like, the accountant's only job is to write down what I tell them to do. They're not in charge of finding people. They're not in charge of making the decisions. I said, if you go to a real accountant, they don't make money for you. They don't save money. They just do what you ask them to do with the information you've given them. And so that's what the accountant does. And I did say, actually, I didn't put it on here, but on Fridays, I guess it's not as much of a part of the classroom economy per se, but every Friday we do have a committee time. And so we do committees for 15 minutes, and I have all different committees, which are not related to economics. Like, I have a sunshine committee that does people's birthdays, a desk cleaning committee that cleans desks. But one of my committees is a banking committee. And so whoever's on the banking committee, the accountant hands them the sheet and they pay people on Friday. I have these paper money. I guess I didn't print them out. Sorry, I didn't take a picture. They're called Dream Dollars. And so they each have a little wallet with a zip on it, and the banking committee takes the accounting sheet and pays the people the money every Friday. And then, so before we get to spending money, is there any questions or anything, or any other ideas or things I didn't think of about how kids earn money and get fined?
Can you say that again, Jodie?
Is there any questions before I get into how kids can spend their money? Are there any questions about how they earn money or get fined, or how the money gets paid out, or anything like that?
I guess I have a question about the evolution of this system, because I can't imagine starting like this. I'm thinking about the teachers I work with, the pre-service as well as the veteran teachers. Like, I might introduce this to a veteran teacher, but I wouldn't introduce it to a pre-service teacher because they have so many other pieces. But as this process evolved, where did you start and how did you grow it? I mean, I know you said you added jobs each year, you added fines each year.
So in the beginning, we just had 2 levels of jobs, basically hourly employees and salary employees. So there was just 2 levels. And, so some people got paid per diem, just because I think that what I'm trying to do is bring in like real job situations. And we did also on the first year have some jobs that 2 people had the same job and they earned different amounts of money. And I did say that this happens, I talked about it happening as a gender issue, as a racial issue. I was like this, because I want them to understand that all of these things actually happen, and so that things don't always seem fair. And there's reasons behind that. Then and in the beginning, we had less fines. I would say about 10 fines, but I have always had the accounting sheet with an accountant. And I have to be honest, for me, that's actually much easier. I don't think I could keep track on my own. And the kids are very responsible. Even when I started in third grade, I never had a problem having an accountant. And every kid does it. If I have a kid who's severely special ed or doesn't speak much English, I always be sure that they're sitting next to somebody, and I'll just say, oh, could you help them with the accounting sheet or something like that? And people are always willing to help out, especially with the writing down the jobs or something like that. But I think it's good practice for them to write down the jobs and the salaries. They like the responsibility of it. And sorry, my dog is barking, so I have to get out my little incentive of my water sprayer to start. Yeah, so I think that some of those things can be more simple, but again, I think the easiest thing to start is to take what you already have and say, is there a way I can make this seem more like how economics actually work? Where, one of the things that I'll talk about the spending money about privileges or about things that you want is when you, in general, work harder or do more jobs and you do less things in life where you've made a choice that has cost you money, you then have more money to spend to buy the things you want. And so that whole system of understanding that their small choices each day add up to their ability to have the things they want is more important than it being intricate. I think the thing about it being intricate is at this point, especially with 4th graders, a lot of kids know like what fines they proposed or what jobs they think are important. So they feel a sense of ownership over the whole system. And so it helps in that way. But I definitely think keeping it simple is to start, and adding in, and I think you can add in at any point. I mean, that's what happens in the real world as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Jody.
Okay, so we have a number of different ways to spend money. So the first is the Privilege Emporium, which is, I'll show you the sheet, but they can buy privileges, and we have two different sets of privileges: individual, which they buy with their own money, and they can also crowdsource some items. So to crowdsource, they have to get at least 10 people who are each giving a fair share for crowdsourcing. And crowdsourcing is something I just started the last few years, but I can't remember why it started, but I think it's an interesting idea. And then I have occasional sales or special events. And I tend to do that if, like, I don't know, sometimes we're in a lull and I just need like a little bit of excitement. And I'll say something like, oh, next week we're going to have buy one, get one half price, or something like that. A type of sale. And then once I did a sale, if you buy one, you can give one to a friend for free. And they actually really liked that idea of, there was more kids wanting to buy privileges for their friend than even for themselves. So that was also really nice. So I just sort of use it. This is the Privilege Emporium. This is this year's. So they came up with the ideas of the things they wanted and the prices. And I don't know if can you read it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like, you can see they recently added a PJ day. So to get a PJ day for the whole class, you would need 10 kids, each contributing $10. Everyone wouldn't have to, but a majority of kids would need to. And then everybody would get a PJ day like that. And so the most common, a yummy snack passes and a homework pass and sit next to a friend are probably the three most common ones. Although actually bring a stuffed animal for the day is fairly popular as well. And there's kids that like count their money and they're like, oh, I think I can bring a stuffed animal this week and still have enough extra money. So they'll count it. And to me, that's like about making a choice. Like, they're looking at how much they have. They're knowing they don't have to bring the stuffed animal if they don't want to, but they're trying to decide if it would be a good choice for them. And so the Privilege Emporium is open all year. Any questions about that?
What's the captain guarantee?
Oh, so I do have a thing which is not really related to economics. Is I have one captain each day who sort of just they're in charge of, like, we have a bell, and they're in charge of the bell. So they have the bell clipboard and they're the line leader. And if I have to have something sent to the office, they get to bring the note to the office. So it's basically like anything that doesn't already have a job, they just get to do it. Oh, they also get the beanbag chair. So they just, we just have a rotating captain schedule. They each get a turn and then we start again. And guarantee means that you can get it on the day you want it instead of random.
Gotcha.
And some of them I added in, like, read to another class for $60. It became a problem that everyone, like, oh, can I redo a class? Can I redo a class? Can I redo a class? And it became like a little overwhelming. So instead of it just being like the first person that asks me, I said it's more fair that it's a privilege that you can purchase instead of whoever runs up and asks me. So in some cases it was like that. Good.
Yeah, thanks.
And so I do have one auction and one yard sale, again, to like understand like the way things are priced. So in the fall, we have an auction, and it's totally voluntary. Everybody's allowed to bring in one item that's either a retail value of less than $10 or handmade. And I send home a note, like, they're not allowed to buy the item. It has to be something they want, that they have, that they no longer want, or they can make something. Like, some people will make a drawing or something. And so I make a list of auction items, and I auction them off like a regular auction. Like, I'll say, who will offer this $10 for this, 15, 20, and they'll raise their hands. And whoever brought in the item gets 50% of the selling price of the dream dollars. And so it's just something that's like fun and exciting. So sometimes you never know what's actually going to earn the most money. it'd be impossible to predict, but people will bring in things like paperback books or a little stuffed animal, like a little art set maybe that they never used, or just little things like that. But they're very excited about the auction, and they like the energy of the auction. And then I also put a few things into the auction. Usually I put in like, a coupon for the Scholastic book order, or usually I put in like a mystery envelope that has something in it that they have to do the auction without knowing what's in the envelope, things like that. So we usually have about 20 items up for auction. And so it takes about maybe 30 minutes to do, but they really like it. And we just talk about the big thing about the auction is understanding supply and demand. Is it doesn't really matter what it is if only one person wants it. Whereas it also doesn't really matter what it is if 10 people want it, then the price is going to go very high. So it's a really interesting, because there's only one of each item, a really interesting lesson into supply and demand. And the yard sale in the spring is more a lesson into like one man's trash is another man's treasure. So they can bring in 3 items, again, less than $10, and they set them up on their desk priced for dream dollars. And then the other kids, I draw popsicle sticks to make it fair of like who gets to go shopping first. So I'll draw the popsicle sticks, and they can go with their dream dollars and buy items from each other. Any questions about that? And a lot of one of the things for the yard sale we talk about is how much of value really is personal preference, because the things people they're selling are things that they no longer want, but they find that a lot of kids actually really want them. And so it's nice to see them see that the items get recycled instead of thrown away, they get shared, but that also something that might not be valuable to them is valuable to somebody else. And then any questions about that before I move to our big thing? So our big thing, which we just finished last week, is the marketplace. It's a 4-week project where they, on the first week, they apply for a patent and they write a business plan, and they have to come up with their own unique idea of something they can make on their own. And what I tell them is I have a list of items that are free. So things like glue, cardboard, stapler, basically items that the kids decided every person has at their house. But every other supply has to come from me. So I provide all the supplies basically to create like a fair market, so that somebody who has a lot of stuff at their house would have no advantage over the people who don't. So I have a lot of boxes of extra supplies. I usually send out an email saying, if you have anything that you want to send in, and if they send it in, then it's free for anybody to take. And so for $20 dream dollars of startup costs, they can take as many supplies as they want. So I put out all the boxes of all different arts and crafts supplies or whatever they want to make. They apply for a patent. So we only have one of each item. Whoever comes for the patent first gets that item. So one thing that we always have somebody making comic books, but whoever applies for the patent first for comic books becomes the only comic book seller. And a lot of times people think of unique ideas, and then they write a little business plan about what their plan is to like get this done. So they do that for 1 week for homework. It's sort of, I have a packet that they do. And then the second week they do market research. So they make one prototype, and they have to present their prototype idea to the class. And then they have to ask that class for 3 suggestions, and they have to write down the suggestions. Like I had a kid this year making little shirts for pencils. So it's like a pencil with the shirt went on the top of the pencil. They were adorable. And so when she had only made at first some cartoon characters, and some of the kids during market research, well, could you make one with football on it? And somebody else like, could you make one with a puppy on it? So they write down the ideas, and they don't have to take them, but they have to explain if they took them or not. In the end, they have to say whether they listen to the market research. And they also present their price idea, and they say how many people think they might want to buy my item. So they get some idea about the pricing of their product and just different ideas. And so they do everything at homework except the speech, which lasts about 2 minutes each, but everything else is do it for homework. And then the third week for homework, they make a poster, and you'll see the posters in the next picture. They make a poster for the front of their desk, and they make a 30-second video advertisement. And the video advertisements range from everything from somebody who 30-second video advertisement literally took them 30 seconds to make, to people like some kids will make like a little iMovie. Some kids will like actually like dress in costume and enlist their family members. I really take anything. It's just like a fun thing to do and to practice persuading people in your video. And then a week where it's called production, where they're making their items. So on that week, I don't give them any other homework. They just have to make it. And I send a note home and I talk with the parents that there's no additional human resources. So they're the only people that can make their product. They can't get their parents' help because, again, we're looking for like a free market. And we talk about the importance of like everybody starting on like a level playing field. And yeah, so it is a 4-week project. And then we do the marketplace, which again, we did last week. Here's some pictures from last week. I don't know if you can see them because now yours are small. Can you see what they look like?
Allie's Rock Shop.
Yeah, so she painted rocks, and you can see the posters on the front are what they made in week 3, and then they had made like a little video. So the kid on the left, out of clothespins, he made airplanes. And then there's an origami shop, and actually, if you can see on the bottom right are the t-shirt pencils, are the pencil t-shirts.
Oh,
they were adorable. I mean, she cut them all out of felt and then drew little pictures and glued them onto the front, and a little pencil slips into the t-shirts. So it looks like your t-shirt's wearing a pencil. I mean, your pencil's wearing a t-shirt, like a custom t-shirt. And so every single desk had like something kind of like this on it. And then again, I draw popsicle sticks to make it fair. They have everything priced, and they walk around and they buy each other's products. And they do keep track. You can see on the airline pencils, he has his accounting sheet in front of him. They have to write down who they sold it to, how much they earned, because at the end, they have to add up their profits, and then they have to subtract $20 for startup costs. And they actually have to subtract the cost of any excess inventory. And so that's a big, again, a lesson into supply and demand. You want to make as much as you can, but if you make too many, you're going to end up losing money. But actually, it's really like, it's one of my favorite days of the year because it's really cute. And I don't show them the commercials. On the day of the marketplace, I save all the commercials and we watch all the commercials and then we shop. Are there any questions about the marketplace? I think that might be my last. Oh, these were, now it's probably too small for you to read. Sorry, I didn't realize it was going to be so small for you. At the end, these are just like, I didn't edit them or anything. These are just, they do a reflection of the marketplace about what they think. I can just say like what a couple kids wrote. I thought it was good at making the price right and lowering at the right time. I also think I did good advertising. I think I need to work on making a little more of my product and my cash register. I think I also need to control myself on how much I spend. In all, I think I did very good. So that was one person. Another one says, it was cool learning about economics and running a business in a cool way, which is having our own little shop. I learned that making something unique and having a lot of unique items, you'll make a good business. Also, you earn a lot of money. I also learned that if you make something that people want and put it for a high price, it will sell for a high price due to demand for the product you're selling. So I learned that's a good way that you can earn a lot of money. So those are the 3 things I learned. And this person just put with the, I sold it for a good price. I had good advertising. I could have started a little earlier. I could have practiced my commercial more. I could have made a few more minions. I learned that if you have a patent, I learned you have to get a patent to say a product is yours. And I learned that you have to pay startup costs. And I also learned that people have to want to buy your product. And those I just picked out like sort of 3 of the, after we do the marketplace, I have them just do a little self-reflection and say, what did you think of it?
Jodie, our district is reading like a book. I think they're calling it 4 Schools, 1 Book. And the book is School for Sled Dogs. You're probably not familiar. It's not a really well-known title, but anyway, it's about a kid who, for a class project for math, they have to create a business plan.
Oh.
And there's so much overlap between what you've shared and what the student has to do. It might be a really nice read aloud or
Oh, for sure. A school for sled. What you don't know is that like economics is fun, but my real obsession is literature. So whenever somebody says I have a book, I'm like, I'm buying it. That's it. I'll buy the book. So I've read the Lemonade War when I've done this, which I also think is a good book in economics. But I love the idea of the sled dog.
Yeah, it would fit in really nicely with this,
What's it
especially
called?
this
The
time of
sled
year.
dog? What?
It's called the School for Sled Dogs, I think. Let me just look it up. I asked my son to bring it up, but he's not checking his texts.
I think like the thing that, and this I guess goes into all parts of social studies, is like the thing that I think I love most about being a teacher is like collecting all these like different books that layer on the ideas of like what I want to do and how I want them to like understand the world. And so, there's all this stuff that we talked about economics, but we also, read this year Long Walk to Water, and it's taking place in Africa, and we were able to think about some of the ways that their economics are different than ours while we're talking about things like this. And I remember one of the kids saying like, oh, because they were building a well. I don't know if you've read Long Walk to Water, but they're like, well, what would happen if people started charging for the water? And they're starting to like get these kind of ideas and thinking about how do different things apply to different situations. And so I love that book suggestion and any other book suggestions.
This is, let me see it.
I Sled Dog. All right, I wrote it
Sled
down.
Dog School. The author lives in Canada.
Huh.
But
And are you familiar with the Lemonade War? I know it's a very popular book, but
no, I'm not, but I wrote it down.
yeah, the Lemonade War is amazing because it's about a sister and brother who have a lemonade stand, and every other chapter is from their different perspective, and they're trying to each earn more money than the other. So they each do something in each chapter a little unique to make their lemonade stand more successful. And so it's interesting in the sister-brother dynamic. It's interesting in the economic dynamic. And each chapter actually starts out with an economic principle that feels over their head. But then once you've read the chapter, it makes perfect sense. So it's actually a great book. It's a chapter book, but it is a really good book for this.